This program is made possible by the loyal financial support of the friends and partners of Family Policy Institute.
You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world.
Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be with you once again on Salt and Light. And I'm speaking to Roger Pearce and Simon Larufello from Every Nation Church in Johannesburg about a remarkable and very necessary book by the title of Better Together, Crossing the Divide in South Africa. Now, Roger, welcome to the show, and Simon. You've written this book, obviously, to address the issue of what is happening in our nation as far as racial conflict, racial tension is concerned. Before I ask you what motivated you to write the book, I'm going to read what Reverend Moss and Clare has written on the back of this cover. He, of course, is the Secretary General of the Evangelical Alliance of South Africa, and I think what he's written here is profound. And he writes, "I know of hardly any intervention in the church community in South Africa today that intentionally confronts the enduring sin of racism as a key discipleship issue, as Roger's book does. It's an honest account of ongoing life-on-life discipleship, unassuming and hard-hitting. It unmasks the deceitfulness and self-justification of racism, submitting it to the rigors of God's word. Better Together," is the title of the book, "brings fresh energy to the task of contextualizing the gospel in post-apartheid South Africa. It calls us all to let go of our tribal comfort zones, the ideological bondages of our past, in order to embrace the new thing that God is doing in our nation." That is a profound statement. I think what Moss is saying is very, very true, that the church is not really addressing this issue, and hopefully the book is. So what motivated you, inspired you to write it?
Thank you, Errol. Thank you for the opportunity. Sam and I, as you know, pastor a church together in Johannesburg, a multicultural church, probably 80% black, 20% various colors and creeds. And we've had it on our heart for some time to write a book. And we began a book, in fact. And then we felt very clearly, this was last year, the Lord said to us, stop that book, and write a book, write this book, Better Together. So it was Simon, myself, and another pastor in Cape Town, Gillian Davids. I think you know him. And to speak into this issue of racial divide. And the book is many stories, many chapters written by individual people. One was written by somebody who was part of the AVB, Afrikaanse Weerstandsbeweging. And there was such a hatred and a fear in his heart. And Christ came into his life and changed him. There's one guy, Derek, very good friend of mine now. He was part of the ANC, Mkhonto Sizwe, and by his own admission, I mean, he hated white people, and his change. So it's a whole lot of stories. Simon wrote an incredible chapter. I don't know if you want to say a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think what is profound about this book is the fact that we look at the past in order to look forward as a nation. And it was great writing and contributing a chapter to this book to say, this is the South Africa I grew up in, but this is a South Africa I want to see for my children, a different South Africa. And it's been great to journey together with Roger and a few others from our church to say we want to build a different South Africa. We want to leave a different legacy for our children. Having grown up in Potchefstroom, I worked as a garden boy, but by God's grace, I was able to study mechanical engineering at Wits University. And to continue the story, having been in Every Nation Church and just working with different cultures, getting an opportunity to go back to Potchefstroom to preach the gospel in the same suburb where I used to work as a garden boy, that's the story. That's
really a remarkable story. Now, Simon, can I ask you, are you surprised at the level of racial conflict you see in South Africa, 22 years in our democracy? Does that worry you?
Yeah. I am not surprised that it's happening. We've had a number of conversations around the role of the TRC, Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We do believe that it touched some people and it helped a number of people, but it obviously did not touch everyone in the nation. So So there are still some people who are carrying some of the anger, disappointments, and past hurts. The other aspect of this is the fact that the government had made promises that by such and such a time we would have made these great changes, and those promises have not been met, and therefore this aggravates the problem that we have today of racism.
So there's a lot of frustration out there, and that's what we're seeing on our television screens now, see what's happening on the campuses. But now, Roger, I noticed just flipping through this book, this is not a preachy book. You're not telling people why they should be reconciled racially. You're telling stories. It's stories from different people, different couples, and just helping people understand through these stories what's happening in their lives, and perhaps it will inspire them to bring about changes. That the sort of the gist of the book.
We're not trying to be politically correct. People speak from the heart. It's quite raw. It's quite edgy. But at the same time, their stories speak of what ultimately happened. And every story speaks a story of hope, speaks a story of what can be. With Christ coming into someone's life, change happens. And I think that's why we wrote the book, because we want to put out a different narrative. We want to present to people when Christ comes into our life, it's not just that he saves us, but he transforms us and transforms our relationships and can transform South Africa. So this is why we wrote it. And
and that is the key, Roger, is that, you know, Jesus coming into your life and that transformation that happens as a result of that, and then your outlook on life, like you, Simon, changes, and you begin to understand, you know, that scripture that says that God has given us the ministry of reconciliation. We understand that. That's man with God and then man with man. But it only happened through that process. But now, if you look at what's happening in South Africa today, and you look at our television screens, what's happening on the campuses, there appears to be more racial conflict than there was, say, 20 years ago. You know, just after the democracy, there was a lot more hope. And now it's kind of gone back, taken a few steps back, where we seem to be getting back to where we were pre-1994. So that transformation issue is not happening, and maybe you want to give some thoughts on why do you think that's not happening? Maybe Simon.
I think you're asking a very pertinent question. Why are we seeing racial issues so much in today's South Africa? And I do believe that it's linked to latent anger. It's linked to people feeling like we would have experienced a different South Africa today. We would see transformation, especially from an economic point of view, where a whole lot more black people are able to get jobs, a whole lot more black people are able to start businesses that are successful. So there is a few that have been able to get into the economic transformation, but not everyone. So that kind of anger is rising up. But I also need to look at it from a different angle, that BEE has played a role. It's been a positive role, but it's had its own downsides because it seemed to have benefited a few and not everyone. And that's another big problem that we are facing today.
Black economic empowerment, benefiting a few and not. So I think maybe that is one of the core issues that's happening on our campuses today, is that people are saying, look, you guys seem to be doing well, and as young people, we are not. So Roger, would you say that our generation have failed somewhat? Because you remember 1994, there was all this euphoria, the nation coming together, apartheid is gone and dead and buried, and it's a new day, it's a new South Africa. 22 years later, doesn't look like that anymore. So the question is, have our generation failed the youth, the young people that are now taking up the
Errol, have you ever woken up with a hangover? Well, probably not for a long time. But the last couple of mornings, I feel like I've woken up with a hangover, and it's just been that we've been part of a conference. It's been very intense, and I've woken up with this headache, and it's almost like the nation has woken up with a hangover. Of there was that initial euphoria, there was that initial joy and expectation, and now we wake up and it's a bit stark. It's not what we thought. It's not what we hoped. What have we done the last 20 years? And I think many things are coming home to roost. There's great poverty, there's great need, there's great frustration, there's great anger, there's corruption. There's so many things, and the gospel needs to come in and pervade. as you know, as a ministry, we are very involved on campus. So we're quite close to the heartbeat of some of the pains and struggles and the anger that is happening on campus at the moment.
So that's the next question, is then the role of the church in all of this. That's scripture again. God has given us the ministry of reconciliation, reconciling people first to God through Jesus Christ. But once we've done that well and discipled people, then the man to man will be reconciled. And that doesn't appear to be happening too much in our country. We see white on black and all of these tensions and people tweeting messages, putting messages on Facebook, and things flare up. I mean, I don't want to over-spiritualize this, but you can see the work of the enemy in this. It's very evident if you're a spiritual person. But again, God has given us the authority and the power as the church to overcome these things, to defeat all of these things. Are we playing the role we're supposed to in South Africa, Pastor Simon?
I think that is a very good question. As a church, we have been given a ministry of reconciliation. And I do believe that there's two things to this. One is the preaching of the gospel to see people's individual lives changed and transformed. But there's also a reformation that brings transformation to systems, to institutions of society. And I think the church tends to focus more on, which is the preaching of the gospel, and it is important, it is the core of what the church should be doing. But at the same time, we need to see the church speaking into what is wrong with our institutions, particularly in the area of corruption. What is wrong with our leaders? Can we do better in terms of holding them accountable in stewarding the resources of the country? So I think there has been great initiatives like South African Christian Leaders Initiative, SACLI. There has been South African Council of Churches trying to get in and speaking into the things that are happening. But it seems like it's a small pocket of the church. It's not the whole entire body of Christ speaking as one voice to say, guys, this is wrong. To cite an example, we had an anti-corruption march about a year ago, which was great because civil society organized and came together and say, guys, this is wrong. We cannot continue to be like this. So I want to encourage the church to come together more and more to speak as one voice to institutional change. We continue to preach the gospel because that's the message that we bring, but the message of reconciliation man to man is also very important.
So Roger, then that brings me to another question, and that is unity in the church.
Yes.
Somebody said that we're not going to see the kind of unity that we want in South Africa between various racial groups until we see the unity that Jesus prayed for in the church first.
Absolutely.
And if we can demonstrate that kind of unity in church, because, you know, again, somebody else said to me, it was quite a shocking statement. He said the most divided time anywhere is a Sunday morning in the churches, because you get all your colored churches and your white churches and your black churches. Everybody's still going into their silos, and that's not what the church is supposed to be. And so when people see that, then they say, okay, well, these guys aren't unified, and they're talking about unity. And so that's why we can't see it in our society. We can't see the outflow of that. Would you agree? And then what do you think we should be doing, Roger?
So many people want to be prophetic. They want to have a prophetic voice into the nation. And that's awesome. But we feel that we need to not just be a prophetic voice, but we need to be a prophetic model.
That's right.
And intentionally build a church that reflects every tribe and tongue gathered together. We sometimes use the expression, a speckled branch. Remember what was Jacob put it before his goats.
That's right.
You know? So we constantly put before our church, when our church was almost monoculture, we put before the church a speckled branch of every tribe and tongue. And we constantly work on that because we want our church to be a place where every person, doesn't matter what their creed, background, even the lineup of the songs, even the style, all these things we think about because we want it to be a place where every person can feel at home. Some people are blue people, some people are green people. Imagine if all the blue people said, I'll go to a church where there are green people as well, and vice versa. It would mean that the church is not blue enough for the blue person, nor green enough for the green person. But you know what? It'll glorify God.
Yes.
And that's the mission that we are on.
And I think that's what this nation is crying out for. And you know, it's going to have to begin in the church. The Bible says the judgment begins in the house of the Lord.
That's right.
And I go around and I speak at churches, I visit churches all over this country. I'm still surprised to see, you know, all white leadership, all black leadership, all colored leadership. And we can't lead that way. You know, we're going to have to, there's some sacred cows we're going to have to slaughter, and there's things that we're going to have to change.
Yeah.
Because, again, if you ask any Christian, do they want to see transformation, real transformation between the people groups? And everybody say yes. And they're sincere and they're genuine. They just don't know how to do it.
Yeah. Sometimes it just takes intentionality of welcoming people of other languages, allowing them into your life, taking the time and trouble to stretch yourself and not just staying in your silos. People are so often selfish, or they're fearful, or they're unaware, and really just put out a challenge to the church. And we're not saying we've got this right.
Yes.
But we are calling the church, and this book is part of it, is to say it can be, and it's meant to be awesome. Every tribe and tongue gathered together. And some of the stories in this book even talk about the young generation who are unaffected, who are living free compared to all the stuff that I needed, healing and reprogramming. And so it can be done, it can happen. And that's what we want to speak about, is that all these things are possible in Christ.
Yeah. So Simon, a lot of people want to see change, but they're hoping somebody else is going to do it for them. They don't want to actually be the change. And they don't understand that concept. So they're saying, we hope somebody will do something about what is happening in our country. And it should actually be, what can I do? What role can I play to bring about change? Every Christian should be saying that, because it's getting so bad in this nation that people are wanting to leave and emigrate. You hear people saying that. Even good Christian people are planning to flee the country because it looks so bad. It shouldn't look so bad, because there's enough Christians in this country. There's enough churches in this country. The presence of God is here. And if we here, we shouldn't be fleeing, we should be changing things.
Errol, you know that things are bad when black people also want to leave the country. I have a friend who has recently said, I also feel like I want to leave the country. So I think that, to build on one thing that Roger said earlier, is intentionality. It is obviously not easy to be intentional, because I have made a conscious decision that I want to build with my brother. Yeah. So it will not be an easy journey, but because we've made an intentional decision to build together, we are in this together. Roger and I, we've been friends over 20 years now. I mean, he was at my wedding. He's seen the birth of my children. And along the journey, there are times where we disagree on certain things, we fight over certain things, but because we are committed to bringing change to our country, we do this. You know, we are willing to go the extra mile. So by that I mean, in relation to what you're asking, we are very good at saying we need change, but someone else has to do it. The change starts with me. Yes. I need to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. It would be more comfortable for me to be in an all-black church singing all Zulu, Tswana, Sotho songs. But you know what? I want to be in a church where I'm a little bit uncomfortable, because I want to build a legacy for my children.
So you're prepared to step out of your comfort zone.
Correct.
To do this, to see it happen. But before you just hold that thought, we're going to go for a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit more about the issues in our country, and then the solutions. And then talk about this book, the kind of stories that's coming out of here, and how you hope this book is going to help people bring people together, because I think that's the intention of Better Together. So don't go away. More with Roger Pearce and Simon Lerofelo after the break. Welcome back to the program. I'm speaking to Roger Pearce and Simon Lerofelo about the book Better Together, Crossing the Divide in South Africa, that addresses the issues of race, the conflicts we're having, and how to get people together, or the solutions. So we were talking in the break about Rosa Parks in the United States that got on a bus and was supposed to sit at the back of the bus, and she refused to do that. And because of that refusal, one old lady, it started a movement. And the civil rights movement was actually born from that.
Right. I don't remember it. It was in the 50s. I was born in the 60s. But as you say, and this was on Twitter and Facebook recently, She refused to get off the bus, but she didn't burn the bus. And we believe that as Christians, there are many ways of non-violent protest. There are many ways of expressing ourselves. Simon, you may know, was on SRC at Wits back in the day. Maybe you want to talk about your protest with the Vice-Chancellor, the non-violent protest.
How many years ago was that, Simon?
20 years. I still look young, but 20 years ago I was at Vets SRC, and something very important happened there. Vets was already known for student protests, and they will vandalize property, they will disturb classes, and a whole lot of things were happening. But being on the SRC, a bunch of us as Christians, we felt like we needed to speak about nonviolent strategic action. And that meant that we said to the students, we are leaders, and we're going to engage with the leadership of the university to bring change. You go to the classes, we will do a sit-in at the Vice-Chancellor's office until our requests have been heard. And that took a number of days with a sit-in, and until we got our requests been taken note of and change started to happen. But it was the end of vandalization of property at Wits University for many years, because a group of leaders said this needs to stop.
Yeah, you know what that tells me, Simon and Roger, is that when Christians are leading, then we see results.
Right. That's right.
Because the last time there was this uprising with Fees Must Fall on the campuses, I remember there were 2 universities where Christian students got together, white, black, colored, Indian.
That's right.
They held hands, they started worshiping and singing songs of worship and began to pray. And even the mainstream media couldn't understand what was happening, but they did something very significant there. They cut across all the unrest, all the violence, all the hatred. They cut right across that. And I think it was exactly what Christians need to be doing.
Absolutely.
So they led Christ-like in a situation that was getting out of control. So that's what we need to be doing, is the church, Christians all over this country leading to bring solutions to the issues of racial conflict in our country. And I think this is what you're doing by writing this book, Better Together.
Absolutely. The book acknowledges what has happened. And I think in the Fees Must Fall, for us to acknowledge the pain, to acknowledge the economic deprivation. The book acknowledges many things, but we can't stay in the acknowledgement. We can't stay in the problem. We can't stay in the pain. Healing has to come. Solutions have to come. And
but how we do that is another issue altogether. But you guys have a vision for the campus. And, you know, every nation has been birthed on the campuses, university campuses all across South Africa. And a lot of the problems and the angst and conflict seems to be birthed on the campuses. And then it spreads into communities. Everybody's talking about what's happening on the campuses. So what is your vision? How do you guys, how are you going to go about addressing this issue? I know it's not the easiest thing to do with everything that's happening, but what is your vision? What do you hope to do?
Every revolutionary movement, the vanguard has been young people. Mm-hmm. And whether it's the communist, whether it was the 76 student riots, whether it was the revolution of the Jesus movement in the 70s, it's young people. And so
that's right.
We as a movement focus on the campus. We deliberately believe that if you change the campus, you'll change the world. We have this expression, 1 foot in the campus, 1 foot in the world. So by the grace of God, we are laboring there. We have got so much more to do. But our heart and vision is to win the campus for Jesus. And we are pressing in at this time, at this most urgent and critical time.
Would you say that it's, you know, the time now that we're living in, and especially what's happening with young people, that churches need to begin changing their focus on young people, because that's where it's happening. Begin to focus on leading young people to the Lord, discipleship, raising up leaders so they can lead on the campuses. Do you think that's
I think
a good strategy?
It's important for the church to continue with the people that are currently in the church, looking after them, but the church also needs to be strategically positioned to attract young people, because we know how the church can be so used to doing things based on liturgy, things that we've always done over the years. But if we are to bring in young people, we also need to move with the times. So I just feel like the broader body of Christ, there may be something we're missing there when it comes to attracting young people into the church. Therefore, we need to almost take time to reflect and say, what can we do to make sure that young people want to come to church and celebrate and enjoy church? Because that's part of the hope of this country. Leaders who are submitted to Christ.
Maybe I'll send you a picture. When you come into our church on a Sunday, at the back, there are earplugs available. Now, we get complaints from some of our older folk. Even my own family, I get complaints, some of the older members of my family, about how loud the music is. But we are not trying to reach that generation. We're trying to reach the younger generation. So we provide earplugs for the older generation because we want it to be a place where young people can be on fire. We don't want to be irrelevant. And you consider South Africa, there's such a burgeoning young generation coming forth. So every church, I believe, should give attention to how they can reach young people. And I'm not talking about changing the gospel message. We're not talking about compromising what the Word of God says. But what we are talking about is contextualizing. That's what Jesus did. Jesus told parables which were relevant to that society. And that's what we're called to do, is speak to young people, you know, in a language that they understand.
And then there's the issue of just the lack of leadership in South Africa as a nation. There are no credible leaders, and I think that's why so many young people are running around, and that's why we see the kind of chaos we're seeing, is that lack of leadership. There's nobody with the kind of stature and authority like Nelson Mandela anymore.
Yeah.
People see corruption, lying, frauding, all these kind of things, and it just,
Breaks our heart.
Yeah, and there's so much despondency amongst young people, and perhaps this is just an outflow of what they're seeing in our nation, lack of leadership. And so isn't it the church's time now, you know, Roger, to provide that leadership, to see great church leaders standing up and giving hope and vision to people? And we don't see that in our nation.
For such a time as this, all of us, we are called for such a time as this. We're called to rise up and get on our knees. We're called to rise up and speak. We're called to be fearless. We're called to be selfless, all of us. And whether you're a mom at home with kids and you can't get out, you can pray. If you're out there in the workplace, you can stand up, stand against racism. All of us can be involved. All of us can bring change to this nation. We saw the miracle. You remember, Errol, when we were all buying tins of food and candles because we thought the world was over.
Yeah.
World was over just
in
before.
1994. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we saw the miracle with African Enterprise and the intervention, and in Carter coming to the party just 2 weeks before the election. And the church was praying. We had stadiums full of prayer. And I think we're at that pivotal moment.
I think so too. You know, I'm just thinking, you're talking about African Enterprise. I think about Michael Cassidy.
Correct.
And the role he played. But you know what is sad? Is Michael is now almost 80 years old, and yet he still has to come out and play a role because there isn't anybody else doing that. The kind of leadership that is required, like, you know, in Michael's time and others that have led, we don't see that with senior Christian leaders playing that kind of role. I don't know why that is, but we do need that kind of leadership. And I thank God for guys like you. You're still fairly young, but you are providing leadership. You are by just, you know, answering the call of God to write this book, and we don't know what's going to still come out of it. You started by being obedient to God. You're writing a book. You're addressing issues. This thing might go around this country. People might be inspired by it, ignited by it. Something in there could speak to them, and we could see something happen. And we're going to pray that it does. What I like about this book is you're not just obviously documenting all the problems in our country. You are telling stories, different families, different people, the kind of challenges they faced, and how they overcame it. So these are personal stories of families and people, which are good, and you can learn a lot from them. But on page 167, your heading there is, what should we do? And there are a number of suggestions. Be bridge builders. I like that. And it's another thing about intentionality.
Correct.
If we don't have the intentionality to be bridge builders, then we're never going to be bridge builders. And then you're going to inspire hope, listen deeply, connect fully, seek to understand, forgive one another. Just give us sort of a summary of what we should be doing.
I think all of us have got strengths. All of us have got weaknesses. Some of us are good at inspiring hope. Some of us are good at leaving the past behind. Some of us are good at repenting. Some of us are good at forgiving. What this does is it gives a bit of a shotgun, a broad-based antibiotic that wherever you are, whoever you are, it's not just speaking to white people, it's not just speaking to colored or Indian or black people, it's really speaking to all South Africans and saying, consider where you are, consider where your heart is, and whatever it is that you need to do, it might be that you've done nothing wrong, but nevertheless you need to reach out. It might be that you need to ask for forgiveness. It might be that you need to forgive. So it touches on every single tribe and tongue in terms of what the response is needed for each of them.
So it gets everybody involved.
Definitely.
And that's what we need.
That's what we need. Yeah. I want to expand on the concept of making disciples is one of the things that we speak about in this book. It means that as an individual, with the people that I'm discipling, that I'm walking with, that I'm mentoring, I'm also bringing this hope of a different South Africa, because there's so much hopelessness. So in the conversations that I have, how am I bringing hope? It may not even be the people I'm discipling. It may just be a dinner conversation. What is my responsibility there as a Christian to create hope versus just to complain about the state of the nation, and use that platform to challenge my friends to say, okay, what are we doing about the state of the nation today? Just yesterday, I was having a conversation with one of the student leaders, and he was saying in their campus in Durban, they realized that the issue is actually not so much the fees. The issue is based on the discouragement that the students see in our leaders today, and feeling like, what's our future if our leaders are so corrupt? So now his role is to actually intentionally build hope in these young guys, that guys, you have a responsibility to do something when you become leaders. So do not think that this is the last, this is the end of the road. We can make a change.
Absolutely. And then this thinking, Simon, in this country, when we talk about racial conflict and reconciliation and all of those things, there is a sort of perception that to deal with these issues, to address it, it's the white man's problem. White people have to reach out. And that can't be true. When it comes to reconciliation, everybody has to lead. So black people have to reach out, Indian people have to reach out, colored people. Everybody has a role to play in reconciliation, not just leave it to the white man to say, ask for forgiveness. It's not going to work because there's racism between Indian and black and colored and Indian, and it's sin. It's a sin issue, and we got to address this, all of us together.
I think the best way to describe it is the concept of bridge building. We are all bridge builders. We all need to come to the party. So whether Indian, black, colored, white, we all need to come to the party. So the whole concept of intentionality is, what am I doing individually to bring change to the nation? So I have noticed that based on the apartheid legacy of South Africa, we tend to point fingers that it's the white man's problem,
Yes.
But the issue is we still have anger that we are carrying, and that's why the concept of the gospel come in. Unless we allow Jesus to come in there bring healing, we will find it difficult to forgive. So the gospel is the solution.
It is.
Esau despised his birthright, and so he had that attitude of, I just don't care. And there's almost an Esau spirit in the nation at the moment. But the truth is, there is an inheritance, and for every South African, we need to guard, we need to treasure our birthright. And our birthright is of a healed, restored nation under Christ. That's what this book speaks about.
Amen.
That's what we're all pushing for.
That's very good, Roger. We all have an inheritance. And it's a God-given inheritance, but we have to fight for it. We have to realize that it's a shared inheritance.
Exactly.
It's not just for one people group, it's for all of us. So how do people get hold of this book, Roger? How, if they want to purchase one? Or
So they could go into the website. It's called Better Together, and there's details there. There's also an organization called Every Nation Productions that they could contact, and it'll be stocked at certain Kum bookshops as well. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure. It's an important discussion. There's something we should be doing more often. I think if we're not talking about it, this thing could spin out and get worse, but the church has the solution, and that solution, as you said, Simon, is Jesus Christ. It's always going to be. We may not be doing such a good job of getting this message out, but I think we have the opportunity to do that. But I think this is a great start. Better Together, writing the book and beginning to invite people to start talking, especially young people on the campus. I think your focus and your vision is right, and I just pray that much fruit will come out of this. So, Roger, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Errol. We
Errol,
appreciate it.
thank you for what you and your show are doing. Thank you. We honor you. It's prophetic, not just a prophetic voice, but a prophetic model. And we honor and thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Welcome to the 3rd annual Walk for Freedom. Whose first Walk for Freedom is it this year? Oh, lots of people. Who's returned from last year? Who has done all 3? Yeah, come on, that's awesome. I've done all 3 too. That's awesome. You know, we're so honored that you are here. You may not know it, but you are actually one of 300 walks that is happening globally. So I think it's something ridiculous, like 40 countries. Yeah, I think that deserves a round of applause. Come on. You're one of 300 walks that is happening globally. And I think when you think about it that way, we're not just a local walk. We're not just walking here around the promenade, but we actually get to be part of a global impact. But the only way that Cape Town is actually going to be on the global map is if we get busy on social media. A21 obviously hosts this walk. I don't know if you are familiar with the A21 campaign, but we are basically a global anti-human trafficking organization. We have 10 offices in 9 countries. We are one of them. Whoop, whoop. And basically what we do is we aim to abolish injustice in the 21st century. So we aim to reach the vulnerable, rescue the victim, and restore the survivor. And so you may think, well, what does a walk do to actually help with that? Well, as you're walking today, because you have A21, we've got flyers that we're handing out all over social media. We are reaching the vulnerable with the message of human trafficking. So that's how you're helping. Secondly, you may notice that you have on your back, it says 0800 222 777. That is the hotline or the resource line that A21 hosts nationally for human trafficking. So if someone wants to know, how do I rescue someone? How do I help someone? Well, you call that number. So by walking today and promoting the number, you are helping to rescue victims of human trafficking. That's pretty awesome, I would say. Come on. And then thirdly, you're assisting to restore victims of human trafficking. This walk is not just about pitching up and walking, it's actually a fundraiser. So some of you have raised funds before. If you haven't raised funds and you would like to donate, just go to our A21 stand, you can grab our banking details, you can donate cash, and why not turn this into a little bit of a fundraiser? Globally, we have a goal to raise $1 million to restore 2,000 victims. So that's quite a big ratio. You can see it costs a lot of money to work with victims of trafficking, but why not? Let's put South Africa on the map to actually contribute to that $1 million, right? You all with me on that? Woo! So feel free to go and donate. Yeah, we're really excited about it, and we just really believe that this walk is going to be more impactful than ever before.
Hi Renee, so we're at the A21 Walk for Freedom today, and this is the 3rd annual walk, and we also recently met with you at the launch of the National Resource Line for human trafficking. So can you tell us a little bit about how the line's been doing for the last month, the connection with the walk?
So the line has been doing absolutely great since we launched. Within the first 2 weeks, we had about 50 phone calls already. And just this month alone, we've had about 300 phone calls. And from that, we've been able to do 5 rescues, which is absolutely amazing.
That's great. So what other kind of things have been going on? I mean, how has the resource line helped as opposed to the older hotline? I mean,
so the resource line has been absolutely great already in assisting governments, not only with translations when they need to screen cases, but also just in guiding them on next steps. Especially social workers and frontline staff at airports have been able to call us in when they've suspected suspicious behavior, and we've been able to guide them on what to do next. So it's been absolutely amazing just seeing people use it as a tool. And just even today we're raising awareness about the resource line number to get it out there, and we're very excited about how it's been doing so far.
Yeah, and I recently saw there was an update that you made 5 rescues.
Yes, yeah, and those 5 rescues have been over South Africa. So it's been great seeing other provinces also promoting the resource line, and that's been done through our referral partners. So it's really been getting out there, and every time someone raises awareness, we see a spike in calls, which is great. People phoning in with tips, but also to ask questions, especially when applying for job opportunities. It's been amazing seeing them actually, look at red flags and phoning us so that we can work with our partners to investigate whether it's really a legitimate opportunity or not. And most of them have not been legitimate. So it's so great being able to do prevention work through the resource line.
Okay, so the resource line is working like it's supposed to.
Yes, yeah,
That's awesome.
definitely. And we're so excited about what it can still do going forward. Just this month alone, having 300 phone calls just shows you that there's such a need for people to be able to ask questions and report things. Because so many people see suspicious behavior and they're unsure, should we report it, shouldn't we report it?
They don't know what to do with it, but now they do.
But every little bit of information that you come up with might be able to prevent someone being trafficked or lead to a rescue.
We're also saying about the calls that you had, tips about job opportunities that they were fraudulent or some kind of scam. How do you actually go about investigating, or rather, what was the outcome of those?
So we have a referral partner called Prevention versus Cure that we refer those kind of calls to, and they then investigate every aspect of the job opportunity. Often what we've found just with the resource line now is that there are individuals posing as if they work for legitimate companies. And so when you Google that company, it seems legitimate, but it's not. One of the biggest things that we've been experiencing is people phoning in to try and see whether those red flags that they are picking up are really red flags or not, and just reporting all types of suspicious behavior. What's been great as well is that there's such a fine line between knowing what is a labor law issue and what is labor trafficking. So people phoning in, reporting their situations, and we can guide them and screen on whether it is a trafficking situation or not. Because often people are so unsure, what is trafficking? You watch movies like Taken and you think immediately that it's just people being, grabbed and thrown into a car, but there are so many different forms of trafficking. Domestic servitude, which is one that people aren't really aware of, where someone is forced to work in a household for little or no pay, their movements are restricted, and often it goes along with abuse. Just guiding people on whether it is trafficking and whether they should report it or who they should be reporting it to, has been really helpful for people. And even, just looking at minors, we see so many minors that are in the sex trade. And if any minor is in that trade, it is trafficking. It's trafficking, So just being able to give people clearer lines and knowing what to look out for, and then having that avenue where they can report it. Because you might see something and think nothing of it, but it could really rescue, someone and free them from years of slavery.
Renee, what are some of the things or the sorts of things that people might want to report to the resource line?
So often they are reporting if there is a specific location where they see young girls coming and going all hours of the day. So that's a lot of what we've been seeing, or seeing young girls looking like they are prostituting themselves, reporting businesses, reporting individuals that are posing as if they work for a company. It can really be anything. Even people have been observing individuals working in their complex, and it seems like they're being treated badly, or their movements are limited, and they've been reporting it, and we can investigate further and ask the right questions.
Okay, thank you. That helps a lot. I think get people, to when to notice, when to report things or to raise those red flags. Okay.
Great.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Renee.
you.
Hi, Katie. It's so great to have you with us again on our show. Old favorite. Or familiar favorite.
Thanks for having us. Well, thanks for having me again.
So we're at the A21 Walk for Freedom for 2016. This is the 3rd annual walk. You said that we have 300 walks happening in 49 stations.
That's 49 nations,
49
I think it is.
nations.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's our third annual Walk for Freedom. I think you guys were at our first one 3 years ago. There are 300 or over 300 walks happening in 49 nations. It's actually incredible, the global impact that's happening today. We're one little walk here in Cape Town. I think there's 9 walks happening on the African continent. We've got one in Mombasa, we've got one in Nigeria, so they're happening all over. And we're just really excited for the impact that is happening today. People standing up against slavery.
Yeah. For the viewers who are watching this for the first time and don't know anything about A21 or what the walk's about, can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Of course. So the A21 Campaign is an anti-human trafficking organization. We're global, so we're 10 offices in 9 countries. But as you can see, 49 nations taking part. We've got a much larger reach, got a lot of supporters around the world. Basically, we aim to do 3 things. Reach people who are vulnerable with the message of human trafficking. We look to rescue victims of human trafficking and then restore survivors to make sure that they are not re-traffickable and functioning in society again. So that's what we do globally. And
That's brilliant. I mean, I love that when we were walking, everyone had the tape over their mouths and everyone was so quiet in a single file. Definitely as an impact, I think.
Definitely. I mean, it was almost eerie, but in a good way, in an impactful way. All of a sudden, we have this excited group of almost, 600-700 people, so excited, and then tape goes over the mouth and it goes silent. And it just makes such an impact of actually people in slavery don't have a voice, and we as everyday people can do something about it. So I think that was really, really exciting for us to see.
Yeah. And then also, last time I spoke to you, it was 2 years ago. I wasn't at the one last year, but the crew and the team were. And I spoke to you about just the tip bill hadn't been enacted yet then. And how do you think it's been enacted or properly implemented now? What from then to now, can you just give us a little bit of a...
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's always going to take a while for any kind of bill or act to now, really properly be implemented and outworked well. We are seeing great efforts from government. We have a great partnership with Department of Justice and Department of Social Development. So everyone in the the right seats in the right places seems to be excited about it. It's just the filtering through to the ground level. What does it actually mean, to work this bill out on the ground? But you know what, we have seen an increase in awareness. I'm sure you've seen on the news that I think it was 59 Malawian women and children were found in the back of a truck. Back a few years ago, those people would have been said, okay, you are illegal immigrants, detain, deport. But now our officials had a look and they thought human trafficking. Maybe these people are not actually, lawbreakers. Maybe they are victims.
They looked into it a bit more.
They've looked into it a bit more. Whether or not that those group of people specifically were trafficked, I think investigations are still being done. But I think that shows our country that we've taken great leaps and bounds just 2 or 3 years ago, where people seemingly breaking the law are actually now seen as victims and potential people who need assistance.
Yeah, and I also speak to Renee about the resource line.
Yes.
And how has that helped A21 and just combating trafficking?
Fantastic. So the resource line is exactly that. It's a tool for anybody, community member, those watching today. Anybody who sees anything strange in their community can call in to 0800 222 777, and it basically gives a tip off that I see something in my community, I'm going to respond to it, I'm going to be responsible for what's going on around me. And we've actually seen that by people doing that, you're getting 5 or 6 tip offs for the same area. Then we are able to feed that back to law enforcement and they can act on it. So what it's actually doing is it's giving a central focus point for the bill to be enacted, government departments to call in, government departments to get referrals from us, NGOs to partner and call in. So it's actually, we've seen it as a great connecting tool. Maybe you want to call it a bridge between civil society and government and general community and those of us providing services for victims.
Okay, and then also, can you give us a little bit about stats trafficking? Do you think it's, we always find there might be an increase now and a decrease later, or, we might not know about everything that's happening. Thanks to Resource Line, we can actually be a bit more informed.
Yeah.
But what are the stats like? What is trafficking or the trafficking scene like in South Africa?
So, the age-old, it's difficult to quantify until you've actually had a law working well for a number of years. But the Global Slavery Index is a new index that's, I think it's 3 years old as well, that produces an index every year for certain countries. South Africa is one of those countries, and they believe that Sure, I think it's, correct me for the numbers if they're wrong, but I think it's 249,800 people that they believe are in slavery in South Africa. So that's about 0.45% of our population. That's an estimate. But then the stat that really gets me is that 45 out of every 100, so that's 45% of South Africans, are vulnerable to being trafficked. Their circumstances, their level of education of trafficking, the situations that they find themselves in renders them vulnerable to become victims.
So we still need a lot more awareness.
A lot more awareness. And, you know, basically just getting out there and saying, well, we have this very vulnerable population. How are we impacting them to make sure they don't become the statistic of 99% that never get rescued? So I think those are some of the more global stats, or local stats. Personally for A21 or internally for A21, we've had 143 survivors rescued globally this year. So up until now, 15th of October in 2016, we've had 143 survivors. 5 of those have been in South Africa this month alone. Many more have come from South Africa, but 5 this month alone through the resource line. So that is other organizations partnering with us, government departments, not just A21, but
Which is
5
exactly
rescues.
what we want. We want everybody to work together.
Exactly. This is not a one-man show. This is not a one organization show. This is a human issue. This is a human rights issue. So every single one of us has a part to play.
Katie, so why do you do the A21 Walk for Freedom, and how does it fit into what A21 does, and not only the awareness part, but other factors as well?
Sure. So we do the walk because I think it's a pretty easy way for a general person to get involved. It's unthreatening. Someone can say, hey, I can walk, okay, or I can cycle, I can do whatever, I'm going to come, and take part. And it allows them a particularly general activity to get involved with a very poignant cause, if you want to call it that. And as I mentioned earlier, the 3R strategy that we have, reach, rescue and restore. So today walking, we are reaching the vulnerable with the message of trafficking. We had those signs and posters that we were showing to everyone, flyers that we're handing out, not to mention the impact on social media globally. That's reaching the vulnerable. Secondly, we are helping to rescue the victim because we're promoting the resource line on our shirts. It's on our backs, 0800 222 777. And the more people that know about trafficking, they're going to call Interpol, so more people will be rescued. So that's rescuing the victim. And lastly, restore. Restore is actually when we're working with a victim to become a survivor. Now that is a very costly process.
I can imagine.
So for A21's walk, we've decided to turn it into a fundraiser. So we've actually got a goal globally of raising $1 million, massive goal, $1 million. And that's actually going to help us to restore 2,000 victims, survivors, should I say.
Yeah.
So then you can see that ratio, $1 million to $2,000. It costs a lot to work into the life of a survivor. It's not just the rescue. That's point one. That's not the end of the road.
It doesn't end there.
Now you're taking someone who's been through trauma, who's been, has major trust issues, major medical complications, and now you have to walk with them to a point that they are now independent in society. And that's what today is about. Just get involved, turn it into a fundraiser, and help fund that so that we are able to help more victims globally. So it's a costly thing, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try,
Exactly. So if people want to donate to A21, how do they go about doing that?
Great. So what you can do is you can jump online, a21.org. There are ways to give online with your credit card. Don't be alarmed. It is all in dollars or the British pound or euro. So that's if you want to donate, that goes to our global A21 bank account, and that obviously then supports all of us offices. If you would like to support A21 locally, email us at info.sa@a21.org, and we will give you the banking details and you can make a direct deposit. That's one way to donate. Another way is to hold a fundraiser. So why not do a walk yourself? Why not have a party with a purpose? So why not have a bake sale, Civvies Day at your school, whatever it may be, and then give us a call and we'll help to get all of that, all of those funds to the right place.
Okay. Katie, how do people go about inviting you to speak at various groups, churches, or whatever organizations or schools?
Great. So if you want A21 specifically to come to your school or your event or your walk, you can also online, a21.org, a speaker request form. If you fill that in, it comes directly to us, and then we're able to, come to your event. If it's specifically for schools, again, email us, info.sa@a21.org. Let us know, and we'll walk you through the process of getting us to come to your school. But you know what? If you're not in Western Cape, maybe if you're in somewhere else in the country, part of what the resource line does is making sure that everybody in the country is connected to the services that are there. So there are many great organizations in South Africa that do human trafficking awareness. So if you're in Polokwane, if you are in Durban, if you are wherever you are, and you want someone to come and represent at your event, we've got A teams around the country or partner organizations that we can connect you to. So feel free to call the resource line for that as well, 0800 222 777.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Only a pleasure. Thanks for having us.